Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network's virtual open house. We're very excited to have you all here. I am going to introduce myself and also go over the agenda momentarily. But while we get everybody into the main room from the waiting room, we'd love to get a sense of who's all here. So if you want to go ahead and put your introduction into the chat. We're asking everybody to share where you're tuning in from geographically. If you'd like to share more about yourself, where you work or where you live, that's great. And then the main introduction question we have here, as you can see on the slide, is if you want to share a dish or a food item that you enjoy cooking or eating, and if you have a personal or cultural connection to the dish or item, that would be great. It's also going to be really useful and related also to our topic for today, which is the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. And while people are thinking about their favorite dish or food item that they might want to share, I will just share a little story from my house. As you might imagine, or if you didn't already know, I'm the coordinator for the Farm to School Network working at the Food Trust, and my name is Sam Gibb. And over the past few months, I've been getting very familiar with all of the different Harvest of the Month products. And we go to our farmers market, which we're fortunate to have just down in our neighborhood here in Philly, every Saturday and get the fresh produce. And so I'm always really excited to see that some of the produce featured, not that surprisingly, is in season, and it's the Harvest of the Month product. And my partner who works with me, who lives with me and works with me in our co-office recently was like, I love Harvest of the Month. And that made me really excited. So we're big fans of Harvest of the Month products over here in my house. And I'm really excited to for all of you to hear a little bit more about this program, not only from folks who are very well knowledgeable and steeped in the project itself, but also from individual stakeholders representing a couple different sectors here in Pennsylvania and within the Farm to School movement about their experience implementing Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. So again, if you're just joining, thank you for being here. And we're about to kick off the virtual open house. But again, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already, where you're tuning in from, and if you want to share a favorite dish or food item that you enjoy cooking or eating, we'd love to hear about it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the agenda here. We have a lot packed into the next hour and a half. First, I'm just going to start off with a little orientation to the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network so that everybody can get a little bit more oriented to what we do, who we are, and how you can get further involved, and hopefully also how you can see the PFSN being a resource for you in your farm to school activities. And then the intention of the open house is to provide a bunch of information and resources on specific topics. We're planning to do these open houses once a quarter. And so right now we're focused in on Harvest of the Month because it's something that you can do all year round, but we definitely know that especially for people who are planning out their year-round menus and their activities, especially if your programming changes in the summer compared to the school year, which it does for many of our farm to school stakeholders, this is a really great time to be thinking about how you can change things up, how you might want to procure more local food, and what types of educational activities you might want to do related to food and agriculture. So we thought this would be a great topic to share. We've got an overview and then a panel discussion with some of our panelists who we'll introduce later, and then we'll save some time for questions and answers in the big group. And then we're going to do some announcements just to provide some information about what's coming up ahead in the coming months, including our next open house and some other ways folks can get involved. And then we're going to spend about 20-ish minutes breaking down into smaller groups so that you all have a chance to share your own highlights and challenges, a little bit about your experiences, maybe also ask some questions if any of the questions you have from the presentation didn't get answered. And then we'll bring it back to the big group to wrap up. And that'll take us to 3:30. So one other thing I just want to share before I kind of kick it off with an overview is as we go, feel free to put questions into the chat. We won't pause to read those questions during the presentations or the panel, but we can circle back to those as we get to the Q&A or in another time. So anytime something pops up into your head, feel free to put that in the chat. And then just one other note about protocol. If everyone, you're already doing a very good job of this, if everyone can keep yourselves on mute. We did want to make this more of a meeting style instead of a webinar so that we do have the opportunity, like I mentioned, especially in small groups, to get to know each other and meet each other. So do whatever feels comfortable to you, whether you want to be on video or off video, talk in the chat or talk out loud, you can raise your hand, etc., especially when we get to that small group networking section near the end. So I think those are all of my announcements. And with that, we'll move on to talk a little bit more about the network. So for those who, I know a lot of people, I will just say, who have RSVP for this open house have been involved with the network in some capacity. And maybe that means that you showed up to a new member info session lately this year. Maybe it means you've been very involved in some other ways, or maybe you're brand new. So everybody's welcome. Hopefully this information is a refresher for those who have heard it before, and for those who are new, helps to get you a little bit more oriented. But basically, the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network has a vision that every child in our state is meaningfully connected to and nourished by thriving and resilient community food systems. And our mission is to basically leverage and build upon the collective resources and the shared vision to cultivate farm to school, as well as farm to early care and education, or ECE initiatives that do these three main things you can see here on the slide. First is just creating meaningful opportunities for all children across the state to grow, learn and enjoy eating Pennsylvania foods, as well as increasing market opportunities for Pennsylvania producers and farmers and growers. And then, of course, to connect and convene all of the various stakeholders, just like we're doing here today in this open house, so that we can continue to learn from each other and improve our farm to school movement across Pennsylvania. So in case folks are not aware, I wanted to orient people a little bit to the main core components that make up what we call farm to school. And when we say farm to school throughout this open house and generally, we do also mean farm to ECE and generally farm to fresh farm food to kids at any age and any sort of format. But we usually use farm to school for short. But these are the three core components: school gardens, nutrition and food education, and fresh food procurement. And these really are not separate entities. They end up being implemented and totally interacting with each other all the time. So as you might imagine, for anybody who has done any sort of experiential learning within garden settings with kids, they're also learning as well as potentially taste testing and trying out and just generally playing in the dirt and playing with the food. So all three of those kind of components are exemplified with just, one of those examples of having a school garden. The other thing that I always like to share with people is that there are varying levels of implementing these various different core components. So I think what a lot of people think about when they think about school gardens is a massive bed of gardens with tons of produce. The ideal vision is that you can actually grow all of the fresh food that you're serving to your kids in your school or your early care and education site. But of course, that's very challenging and definitely not realistic if you're just starting out. And that's why I like to include this photo here of the tabletop greens garden, which is a perfectly good way to start and still a very meaningful way for kids to learn about how their food is grown. So that's one of my big tips I always share with people is feel free to start small when you're getting started with farm to school or just wanting to implement a little bit more, because you can always grow from there. Pun intended. All right, moving on. And one other sort of model I want to share with folks is from our friends up in Vermont, who have been really strong leaders in the farm to school movement for a few decades. And we continue to learn from them every day. Vermont Feed and Shelburne Farms, they have a great partnership with their farm to school work. And they've really honed, among many things, this idea of having a holistic approach to farm to school. So you can see here that they talk about the 3 C's. We often talk about that here in Pennsylvania as well. And what that means is that we think about accessing kids with fresh food and agricultural education and experiences in the classroom, in the cafeteria, and in the community. And ideally, if all three of those sectors are being met, then everywhere that a child is experiencing their life, they get the opportunity to not only eat fresh food, but also experience the details of where it's all coming from. So we'll come back to this approach. I'm sure it will be kind of referenced, and you'll hear snippets of that as we go through into the presentations. But a couple more things I wanted to share about the network before I pass it over to our feature presenters is just a little bit more about our structure and what our priorities are right now. So as folks can see here, we are made up of members. The PFSN is a collaborative, and members are folks like you. Basically, anyone and everyone who's on our email list, we count as a member. So that typically means, and what we're assuming, although we are interested in doing a little bit more analysis of who exactly are our members, is that usually there are people who are engaged in some way in Farm to School, or are excited about figuring out how to be engaged with Farm to School. And then some of those members also get involved a little bit more and take on some leadership by joining our working groups, which meet bi-monthly for about an hour. And those working groups relate to these three prongs of our strategic plan that you can see here on the slide on the right-hand side. So one of them is around network building and communication, which is generally figuring out how can we create a network that really reaches as many people as possible, is accessible, and continues to grow stronger and stronger to support everybody in their Farm to School efforts. The second is to just support stakeholders to implement Farm to School, which we're hoping that, especially with today's open house and talking about the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month program, that will be one way that you can be supported. But there's tons of other ways that we also help with implementation, including professional development and resource development. And then the third category is policy advocacy. So basically working to build sustained support for Farm to School. And those three working groups right now have been consistently running for the last year and a half or so, 2 years, and we're working to build them out as well. And so I'm sure folks who are on this call have already expressed interest in joining working groups. Thank you for your patience. If you haven't heard from me or another member, as we've been figuring out exactly what we want that structure to look like and planning for this specific event with the open house. But in the months ahead, we do plan to reach out and start inviting more people to take on those leadership roles if you're interested and have capacity. And then lastly, with our structure is that we have a leadership team. You can see the members listed on our website, but they're basically representatives from the state agencies of departments of health, agriculture, and education, as well as a set of nonprofits that represent farmers and school food service directors. So it's a really well-rounded, diverse representation of the stakeholders we aim to support. And then there's a coordinating agency, and that happens to be the Food Trust, and that is also why I am the coordinator of the network. So just briefly, I'll show you on the next slide some of the plans and priorities that we have right now. I'm not going to go into a ton of details here, but just wanted to show a visual of what we have that's going on. Our website is a really great place for you to learn more about the different projects and programs, and we'll talk a little bit about some of these in our announcements as well. But there really is a lot happening, and we're so excited to be sharing this with you all today, and also really excited to continue hearing from you and learning from you as we continue to make this collaborative network as supportive as possible for the folks on the ground doing this work to really serve our communities and kids. So with that, we are going to move into our feature topic for today, which is the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. And I'm going to pass it over now to my lovely colleagues, Audrey and Elaine, who are also members of our leadership team, so they can share about this program.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks to all of you for being on the open house call today. Excited for you to hear from our panelists about how they are implementing Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month, and looking forward to hearing more in the small group breakouts at the end of the call to get to know more of you. So as Sam said, we'll be talking today about Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. Hopefully some of you have already heard about this program. Go ahead to the next slide. So Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month is has been an idea in the works for quite some time. But the concrete parts of it started to come together with a 2019 USDA Farm to School grant which helped us at the Pennsylvania Department of Education, along with our partners at Penn State, Project PA, Elaine, who will be speaking here in a moment. With that first grant from USDA, we were really able to develop the core, identify the items that were going to be the suggested features for each month throughout the year by talking with different stakeholders, including producers and groups that represent them, and starting to develop materials. So the core materials were developed with that first round of USDA funding, and then we were able to expand promotion of the program, not just to schools, but also to child and adult care food program sponsors and other ECEs, as well as summer meal programs through a fiscal year 2020 Farm to School grant, and our continuing expansion through the current USDA Farm to School grant. And Elaine will talk about some of the latest resources that are being developed with that funding. Next slide. Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month has a number of goals, and one of them is for kids, whether they're eating meals at schools or in early care and education sites, or right now in summer meals programs, they be having opportunity to taste and be nourished by the wonderful agricultural production from within our state. We also hope that Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month can help children to learn about these agricultural products. And for that reason, there's the whole range of materials that have been developed to support the providers of these meal programs with additional information to help provide this education, as well as serving these Pennsylvania grown foods. So again, to have children able to eat these local healthy products, and also to support those who work so hard throughout our state to produce food. Next slide. So this is a screenshot from the home page of the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website, and you see the address at the bottom. So you land here and then find lots of resources. Go ahead to the next slide. So we do suggest an item for each month of the calendar year, but none of the resources that you can download and print have any identifiable month attached to them. And the reason for this is that in different parts of the state, different items may come in season at a little bit different time. Many of the items are actually available in many months of the year. So we encourage schools and childcare and summer meal programs to, as much as possible, procure the items for their menus and taste tests from local sources. And so if they need to, adjust the month that they purchase according to what's available in their local area, that's perfectly fine. There are also alternate items that you can see at the bottom that have seasons of longer availability, the potatoes, eggs, and broccoli. And we also say that even if a school or childcare location or summer meal program is not able to actually source a given item for their taste test or their menu from a local source, still increasing children's familiarity with these Pennsylvania products is a great thing to do. So just because you're not able to source something for a given day from a local source, it's not. It doesn't mean that you're going outside the boundaries of the program. Increasing children's familiarity with any of these items is helping to achieve the goals of Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. Next slide. On the website, you can download posters, fact sheets, newsletters that are oriented toward families, signage that could go on a serving line, table tents, but also ideas for things that you could post on social media, printable activity sheets that are geared toward preschoolers, different types of graphics of the items. And then there's a whole recipe section. Go ahead to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I thought the next one was recipes. This is an example of one of the fact sheets, which are actually oriented toward the nutrition program staff. So it has information, for example, about how to select and store the item and how to use it, some nutritional information. The next slide is the other page of the sweet potato fact sheet. And that does include a recipe as well. But then the main place to find recipes, is this section. You can see across that red bar on the top. You can go to the recipe tab, and there's a whole section of recipes that are oriented towards school food service, another section for child and adult care food program, food service, and also recipes that are sized for family or household use. So depending on your intentions for using the recipes, or maybe in your early care and education center, you'll go to the child and adult care food program section. But then when you have some time to make a meal for those you share meals with on the home front, you can find recipes of that scale. So you might use different sections of this recipe collection, and there are recipes being added to these sections. So keep checking back. All right, go to the next slide. And this is where I will turn it over to Elaine, and she'll give us some information about some of the newest things that have been coming out and things that are still to come. Thanks, Elaine.
Thanks, Audrey. So as Audrey mentioned, some of our more recent materials include, for one, some information for producers. So this is on a tab on our website that says information for producers. And this is information for a producer that might want to get involved in Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. So it provides a little background information about what Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month is, and then describes a little bit of background about child nutrition programs and how they operate, and in particular, a bit about the local procurement regulations that child nutrition programs must follow. We also recently developed and added gardening information sheets. So we have one of these for each of the 15 Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month items. And you can see on this slide an example of the one for growing cabbage. So these are just kind of 1.5 page documents that provide information about selecting and preparing a site, planting the item, caring for the site, and then harvesting. So these we thought might be useful for anyone who might be interested in growing Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month items in a school garden or a home garden or a community garden or a garden at a child care center. So those are all available on the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website. I should just mention all of these materials that we're talking about are just freely available. There's no kind of registration or sign on or sign up. These are just available for anyone to download to use. So if I could have the next slide, please. These are not available yet, but they are in development. We're developing short 4 to 6 minute culinary videos featuring Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month items. So we're working with a chef to develop these videos that will be posted on the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website. Again, we'll have a video for each Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month item that will talk about things like what to look for when you're selecting the item, a typical packaging that the item might come in if purchased locally, how to process the item, store the item, and then a little bit about preparation of each item. Next slide. Oops. We also are currently supporting some schools, I believe 18 schools, that are engaging students in Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month by implementing student contests. So these are contests, it's not a statewide contest, but we left it up to the discretion of each school to decide what kind of contests they wanted to implement in their schools. So we have some doing poster contests, photography contests, video contests, and we'll share the information about what each school implemented, including their winning entries, on our website. And this is something that we plan to offer again in the future in later school years. Next slide. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that for the past maybe about 8 years, most summers, not all summers, but we have offered hands-on culinary training sessions for school nutrition professionals throughout the state, and they have been very popular. We're offering them again this summer, but the little twist this summer is that they will focus on Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month. So they'll still teach the same culinary skills that we have aimed to teach each summer, but the recipes that will be featured and the items that will be discussed will be Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month items. So a lot of those recipes in the section of the website that Audrey pointed out will be featured in these sessions. So in addition to offering 3 sessions for school nutrition professionals, we're also offering half-day sessions for child and adult care food program and summer food service program sponsors. And registration for all of these sessions are available through the Project PA website. I will mention that the sessions, the 2-day sessions for school nutrition professionals are currently all full, but we do have waiting lists available, and we're encouraging people to sign up for those waiting lists because we have found in the past that people register for sessions in April and May, and by the time they come around in June, July, and August, they may no longer be available. So we're often able to accommodate people that sign up for those waiting lists. Okay, next slide, please. So we also have planned for later this year some sessions that are not specifically focused on Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month, but they will be a component of these sessions. We have planned some farm to child nutrition regional sessions. One will be in Allegheny County at the Allegheny IU on October 11th, and also in Harrisburg at the Farm Show Complex on October 24th. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it back over to Sam to talk a little bit about some materials related to Harvest of the Month that the Food Trust has developed.
Yeah, thanks, Audrey and Elaine. So this slide just kind of highlights one of the most recent resources we put together to supplement all of the amazing materials that are up on the Harvest of the Month website. And these are activity guides. So they're smaller, condensed versions of all, like I mentioned, all the great resources that are already up on the Harvest of the Month website. But they're meant to be kind of bite-sized and give some ideas and inspiration so that if you're working in your cafeteria or in the school, or maybe you're just outside of the school and you're a community member or parent, these are really awesome opportunities for you to take the information, whether it's facts or books or another set of sample recipes or activities related to each product of the month. And that resource is up on our website as well. And with that, we're going to move right into our panel. So we've got 3 people here who are going to share a little bit about their experience implementing Harvest of the Month, hopefully some successes and maybe even some challenges, but most importantly, just to hear some great examples of what's going on out in the field so that hopefully everybody can get some inspiration. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat now. After our panelists go, then I'm going to pass it back over to Audrey, who will facilitate a Q&A for 15-ish minutes or so. So if we don't answer your question in the chat, don't worry, we will get to it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it right over to Lindsay Brown, who's the director of Brown's Family Child Care in Venango County.
Thank you, Samantha. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Like Samantha said, my name is Lindsay Brown, and I own an in-home group home child care facility where I teach preschool. Over the past 9 years, out of the 11 years that I've done this, I've had a passion for teaching and implementing Farm to ECE core components into my program. I teach a nature-based curriculum with a nature-based curriculum with my homegrown curriculum, excuse me. I have utilized the resources such as PA Harvest of the Month materials to supplement what I already do. In 2021, I started piloting the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month program into my program. And since then, I have continued to do the program. So the ways that I incorporate Farm to ECE into my program is through growing the items inside or outside. During, all year long, we garden. We do what I call a food for thought project, which is kind of like a taste testing, but to me, it deserves a better name than just a taste test, because not only do we try the item, but we explore the whole item, the parts of the plant that are edible, the plant life cycles. We use our 5 senses to explore the item. We do literacy in lunch, or snack in a story, or breakfast in a book. That's what we like to call them, where we will read a book that has something to do with the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month item. So I have a few slides to show you some of the examples that I've done in my program. And here, after we tried beets for the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month item for July, everyone with a big smile on their face there has a sticker, because they all did try it. And one tip that I have is that you should try providing items in several different ways. So we did fresh beets and tried it that way, where they could explore the whole beet. And then we also tried canned beets. I believe they possibly were like they had vinegar in them or something like that. So that's one tip that I have, is to provide the item in several different ways. And another example is how I did the squash. We did them 3 ways. We did fritters, baked, and roasted. And some of the children only liked them 1 out of the 3 ways, which is fine. At least they got to try the item and tell their families about it. And I utilized the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month resources by using my Facebook page, so that I can engage my community and my families in my program. I send all the links and the newsletters with the recipes, so that they're welcome to try them at home, just so that they know that they're out there and available. And like I said, I've done this since February 2021, and I continue to do it. My preschoolers and my families love it very, very much. And another tip that I have is to have children help make the meal. We used to do cooking every Friday, and the kids really loved it. So now I allow them to help more and more. And I think it's just a great thing to get them engaged in, by having them help. Next slide, please. And these are some other ways that I've done some of the items. Broccoli is, there's not a specific month for that, which none of them, you can use them at any time, but broccoli is one of the alternative ones. And I have this book called Nope, Never, Not For Me. And I added these fun little tins for them to have their vegetables in, and we tried them. And then for strawberries, you can do something fun, like make a flower like I did there. And that's also Child and Adult Care Food Program aligned. So if that's what your snack, that's what you're having for a snack, then you're also doing the food program and Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month at the same time. And then another thing that I do is up at the top left corner there, I do a book club program once a week on Thursdays. And every child in my program gets to take a book home. So for this one, we did Dragons Love Tacos, and you can use the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month item, leafy greens or green peppers for this one. And we just had a big taco bar, and they could make their own plates, and there was Doritos and soft and hard tacos for them to choose from. And it was just a fun way to incorporate it into your program. So yeah, just have fun. And I think one challenge that I have found is sometimes you can't find the items locally. And so we have had to just get what we could at the store. And another one is encouraging children to try new items if they're not familiar with it. So sometimes you're wasting a lot of food. So sometimes just for the first time around, maybe just do a few, just a couple bites for each child, and then go from there. So that's my tips I have for you. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Next, we have Helen Heidler, who's the General Manager with Whitson School Nutrition and Food Service Director at Southern York County School District. Take it away, Helen.
Hi, I'm Helen Heidler. I've been passionate about farm to school since I became a director of school nutrition a few years ago, and I try to incorporate it whenever I can in my schools. It's just a win-win for everybody. And I find that it's super important for the students to try new things. I always bring in the informational posters of the items that we're featuring, and was lucky enough to be granted to get a grant to create a recipe for the Harvest of the Month. And that was a little process that we started last year, or maybe it may have been the year before, in the end of the year, where we got winter squash. So I have an amazing chef, and I kind of handed the recipe creation process to him. And then I took the marketing process in the back end, and we worked together. And so we created a butternut squash muffin. And so we were able to procure some of that squash from our local farmers. And then we created the muffin recipe, and then we taste tested it in some of the schools. So that was a fun process for us. Audrey was able to come, and we taste tested it in one of our elementary schools, and the students were they were thrilled, actually. Some of them were super excited and wanted the recipe to be put on the menu, which was really exciting for all of us. But I think the key to doing anything like that for an elementary level is to get the kids buy-in in something. And they really love being a part of something like that. We had posters on the wall that said, "I tried it." It said, "I liked it, I loved it," or "It's not for me." So in addition to the "I tried it" sticker that they got to take home, and we want them to take that home. And so that gives them a chance to talk to their parents about what, happened in school today, what we did in school today. But then they got another sticker that they were able to put up on the wall. So we got their feedback on whether or not they liked or didn't like the product that, the taste testing that we did. So it was a super fun time. I think the kids really enjoyed it. We did it in a couple schools, so it was interesting. Some tips that I have are get your stakeholders together. The first thing that you want to do is you want to contact, if you have administration in your school, if you're working at a specific school, you want to contact the principal and make sure that they're in on fun, and they're okay with what you're doing in their school. And so that's the most important thing before you start, is to get those stakeholders on board with you. The other thing is, if you're doing the Harvest of the Month, is to get your farmers lined up and give them plenty of time. So I always try to contact them at least a month and a half before I may be asking them for something specific. And even if you're more organized, you can do it on a yearly basis and tell them what you might be interested in purchasing from them at specific times. The other thing is, like I said, is stickers for the kids. They love to have stickers. There's a website where they have Tried It stickers that are free. It's on the USDA Team Nutrition website. They also have posters. So I always have plenty of stickers whenever I do something like that. And the feedback I talked about, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Farm to School is a wonderful win for everybody when you incorporate it into your school, because you're bringing the kids fresh fruit and vegetables. You're giving the farmers much needed, what's the word I want to say there? You're giving that, you're buying their product, so you're giving them that, and the community. It just brings the community around. So those are the things that I can share, and be happy to answer any questions later if anybody has any.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Helen. And we'll move on to our final panelist, Marcy Jacob, who is a Power Up nutritionist with Adagio Health that's operating mostly out in Western Pennsylvania. Take it away, Marcy.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcy Jacob. I work for, like she said, Adagio Health. I work in Turtle Creek. It's right outside of Pittsburgh. My main role here is called Power Up. We teach in the classrooms nutrition, but we wanted to get this into the cafeterias and get them trying the food other than just teaching them about it. So we use Harvest of the Month. I was lucky enough to partner with the food service director at one of our schools. Her name is Kylene. She helps by making the foods or helping her staff make the Harvest of the Month foods. And then I was able to serve them. So for example, we have the sweet potato and dairy here. So we made smoothies using the dairy. We made this sweet potato salad using the sweet potatoes. And it was nice that I was able to serve it because the kids knew me from month to month of teaching. So they were kind of excited to see me in the cafeteria. And then I think that helped them to try it more. So it was nice being able to partner with her to try to get the kids to try these new foods. And then I think a benefit to it is to the resources. You can see it provides a clear picture. So a lot of kids might not know what a sweet potato looks like. They're getting this cup, it's all cut up already though. So having the resources helps them if they go to the store with their someone that takes them to the store, they can see, oh, this is what I tried at school today. They might not have known that's what it looked like. And then I think a challenge that I faced was not having enough food, which is good. They didn't provide enough when they were making it. And I think that's because they probably didn't think that a kindergartner would like to try a kale salad when realistically they wanted seconds. So that was a nice problem to have. But I think just having adults or teachers or people prepping it realize that kids like to try the foods. So making enough for a whole school. Because yeah, these kindergartners were asking for seconds and thirds of the kale salad that I didn't have enough of. But yeah, so I think that's, yeah, you can see here the sweet potatoes, the dairy, and then I did, yeah, the kale salad for our April lesson.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcy. So I'm going to pass it over to Audrey, who will facilitate our Q&A. And we've got about 10 to 15 minutes for time in this big group. There'll also be some time in the small group networking as well. If you're, not sure you want to ask in this large group, you can save it till then. But yeah, this time is yours. So I'll pass it over to you, Audrey, and we'll get to hear a little bit more from our panelists.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you so much, Lindsay and Helen and Marcy. That's so inspiring to hear how you're making use of Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month in your own contexts, and really great to hear about how the children engaged with each of you in your settings and the activities that you're doing with them. Excuse me. So participants on the call, any questions that you have for any panelists or anything just sort of about the background of the program for Elaine or for myself, feel free to put questions in the chat, or if you would prefer to ask it by coming off mute, just maybe use the raised hand feature so that we can see that you have a question. Maybe Sam, you can help me to watch out for that if there's anybody there. But I see we've got one question ready here in the chat. From Sarah. What did you make with the sweet potatoes? So Mark?
It was a sweet potato salad.
I think that one is for you.
Yeah, it was a sweet potato salad. So pretty much like a potato salad using sweet potatoes. And then most other ingredients were almost the same. So it was good.
Great. Thank you, Marcy. Question here from Nicole. If we do not participate in the food to school programs, can we still apply for grants for gardens? Do you have grants available for inside growing, such as hydroponic setups? So maybe I'll open that first to the panelists. Have any of you found sources of funding for school gardening activities? And I have an idea that I can share as well, but wondered if any of you have anything first of all. One grant opportunity that just closed for its current cycle, but the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture has a Pennsylvania Farm to School grant that is through Pennsylvania Farm Bill funding. And preschools through schools with up to 8th grade are eligible to apply. And that grant does fund a whole range of farm to school activities, including gardening. So that would be something to definitely watch out for, Nicole and others of you who would be interested. So eligibility can vary. There are other nonprofit grant programs. And if you're not already signed up for the monthly harvest, the Pennsylvania Farm to School Network's monthly e-newsletter, which I'm sure Sam will make sure everybody knows how to sign up before you leave the call. If you're not signed up for that, I would encourage you to sign up, because that's a place where grants of different types with different eligibility lists and different amounts of funding get announced. So that's a really good place to look. All right, next question from Chandra. I believe this is for you, Helen. You mentioned stickers. Could you just say a little bit more? You mentioned USDA Team Nutrition. Maybe say a little bit more about how you found those and what you did to order them.
So I see somebody just put the link in the chat.
Oh, awesome. I didn't get that part.
It's the USDA Team Nutrition, and they have an amazing amount of resources there. And I don't think it's just for K-12 schools. But I have stickers for, I tried it days. They have taste testing stickers. They have taste testing posters. There's a lot of great posters there that are beautiful, featuring beautiful fruits and vegetables that I hang in all my schools as well. So that's USDA Team Nutrition.
Great. Thanks, Helen. And thank you, Lindsay, very much for putting that into the chat. And I'm also just double checking before I say this for sure, but yes, there is a downloadable sticker document in the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website in the downloads section. So you would have to have, your appropriate, sticker stock to print it on, but there is an image that's sort of set up for generating stickers on the website. Fantastic. All right, next question. Does anyone work with a food vendor that has done Harvest of the Month? And if so, how did that work? So Lindsay and Helen and Marcy, I know you procure for different sizes of operations. And Marcy, I'm not sure if you do the actual procurement or if that would be the school itself that does it. More of the schools?
It's the school. So I work as the food service director, but they kind of take care of all the.
Yeah. Okay. So Helen or Lindsay, maybe each of you and your responses could probably give different perspectives on this, since you're procuring for very different sized operations. So if you have anything to share about working with a vendor to procure your Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month items, that'd be great. Lindsay, I see
I have worked with the Common Market, and they will provide a lot of the promotional materials specifically about where the farmer is and information on the farms, and also nutritional information on the products. So I'm going to utilize them a lot more this coming year, but they do have that available if you purchase from them.
Thank you, Helen. And another thing that I would point everybody to, Elaine mentioned on the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website that there is a resource now for producers. So if you're even thinking about reaching out to somebody who's selling at a farmer's market or a local farmer, you might want to print that sheet off and let them know about the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month program, so they have a little bit of a background and understand a little bit more about what it is that you're looking to procure Pennsylvania grown items for. Next question is from Andy. Do you have any resources or ideas for cyber school settings? Do the panelists think about how the things that you do in your settings could be adapted for use in a cyber school setting. While you're thinking, Andy, I would just encourage you to check out the download section of the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website. There are a lot of resources there. The fact sheet that's sort of oriented towards school food service has a lot of information that could actually be used even with students in an educational setting. The family newsletter, definitely the same. Sam made reference to the educator resources that the Food Trust has developed to accompany the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month items. So those would be modifiable to use in a cyber school setting. Panelists, do you have any other ideas that have come to mind on that one?
I was thinking hydroponics would be a good one because you could have the WIC hydroponic system that students can make using 2-gallon pop bottles and found items, so it's small. And then also vermicomposting might be good because the worms are low maintenance and you don't have to do a ton for lessons, but they're really engaging and hands-on.
Thank you, Jasmine. I think you might be an upcoming resource maybe for sharing on a call like this. I think you've got a lot of really great ideas that could be adaptable in different settings about gardening. Thank you for sharing. A question from Sarah, and this one I believe would be for you, Lindsay. Which books did you use with your breakfast and a book, lunch and literature, snack and a story? And you know what? Did you already respond to that one in the chat? I think. Read aloud about
I did.
items and cooking.
The read
Okay,
aloud,
good. And you offered to Sarah that you would send a list. Great.
yes, the read alouds in the cooking classes were for the cyber school.
Oh, great.
That was my suggestion for the cyber school.
Excellent. Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you, Tamara, for posting a link to the SGSO, School Gardens. I'm forgetting that full acronym right now, but the School Gardening Network does have a lot of excellent resources.
Yes, actually also Whole Kids Foundation does a specific hydroponics. So if the person who is looking for the hydroponic system, they do a lot of funding for just indoor equipment too. So, and for everyone here, my favorite book, if we're doing books, we need How Groundhog's Garden Grows by Lynn Cherry is probably one of the best read out louds because it has pictures of almost every vegetable and then also their seed and the plant in multiple phases of growing. So that's a fun one.
That sounds wonderful, Tamara. Thank you for sharing. I will need to look that one up too. So the question from Patricia here related to school gardening. Tamara's link suggestion there, what she just mentioned about Whole Kids, might be an idea for gardening curriculum questions. Jasmine, who jumped in with a response about some ideas for vermiculture and small scale gardening, is another fabulous resource. The USDA Farm to School website has some gardening resources. The Project PA website has a section on school gardening. Lots of resources out there, which I know can sometimes be overwhelming to have so much information. Do any of the panelists have any picks for where to go for gardening resources? for curriculum particularly?
I like the growing
I-
garden
go ahead.
curriculum. Sorry. And I'll just put the link to that in the chat.
Thank you, Jasmine. And we had somebody else hopping into, was that you, Marcy, or? No,
It was me.
Lindsay.
Sorry.
Great, thanks.
I was just gonna say, since I do my own curriculum, I have actual lesson plans and photos in action of every single item for the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month, as well as gardening from beginning to end, from the time that the kiddos are putting seed into the ground to cooking the item and trying the item. I would be happy to share some of that, since they're actual in-action photos, which make it a little more realistic than just, something that you're seeing in a curriculum. So I'd be happy to share that with everyone as well, if they'd be interested.
Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you all for additional comments. I think Sam has given us a nudge to wrap the Q&A up here shortly, so we have time for our small group conversations. But thank you. See, there's good conversation here about finding local connections amongst folks from different parts of our state. And thank you, panelists, and others of you who've jumped in with resources and links. That's so helpful, and I think really fits the goal of what this open house was aiming for today. So thank you all for jumping in.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll work to answer any of the lingering questions in the chat as well. Feel free to bring those up in our small groups. Before we do go into small breakouts, we wanted to share a few announcements, and just like Audrey referenced, ways that everybody can stay informed moving forward, and help plan ahead for some of the big events coming up. So this slide has the link to our monthly harvest e-newsletter. So feel free to scan the QR code or go ahead and head to the website there using the pafarmtoschool.org, get involved. I will also drop another link in the chat if folks are interested in getting a little bit more engaged, not just having the newsletter, but you want to actually participate in a more active way. Of course, these open houses are going to be an opportunity for that, but you can also see listed here on the right that we are, and I mentioned earlier, looking for individuals who want to come help strategize in these working groups that we meet with bi-monthly for about an hour. And so I know some people here have probably already completed our, what I'm calling the new member intake form. If you participated in one of our new member info sessions during the beginning part of the year, this was sent out in an email. We have not ignored those responses. We have just been busy trying to figure out exactly how to help onboard people into the next steps. So feel free to follow up with me if you're eager and excited about participating in working groups or getting more engaged. And if you haven't already filled out a new member intake form, go ahead and fill that out in the link, and I'll send this out in a wrap-up email as well. Some of the other questions too that were put in the chat related to being able to get connected with people in your region. I love those because we are really thinking about in the next few years how to set up a structure sort of with regional hubs and leaders and contact people, so that if folks involved in a particular county or region in Pennsylvania want to get connected with people in their area, whether it's farmers or other ECE providers or cafeteria staff, we can help to facilitate that. So we have a little bit of work to do before we can actually get that structure and system set up and running, but we're very excited to do so. In the interim, feel free to reach out to me. My email is on the website, and we can always check our lists that we do have so far and help get you connected to any other interested members and people in your area. So that's a little bit about some of the resources and next steps for involvement. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jamie, who's going to share a little bit more specifically about what's coming up. And then I'll set up our little sessions for the breakouts.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name's Jamie. Like Sam said, I work with the Food Trust, but a few upcoming events, things happening that are Farm to School related. In October, if you might not know, is Farm to School Month. It's a national month that we celebrate, but also Pennsylvania has a lot of celebrations going on. And it's a great time to just celebrate the activities that you're doing in your communities and at your schools. It's also a great time to share stories and to interact with other people across the state to kind of see what they're doing in their schools and communities that is really exciting and inspiring. And Sam will share in the chat just a highlight from last year's Farm to School Month, so you can get a little inspiration for what's to come. And another great way, like we said, is to share your success stories. And so we'd love to hear from people about what you're doing, not just during Farm to School Month, but throughout the year. So if you have any stories that you'd like to share about activities that you're doing in your schools or in your communities that's related to Farm to Schools, if you have great photos, we'd love to see those as well, because we like to share those in our newsletters and on our website so that other people can see what we're all doing across the state. And then lastly, our next open house will be at the end of September, and that'll be talking a little bit more about Farm to School Month and try to get people excited about the month and start planning for what activities they might be doing. And so we will invite you all back if you want to share any activities that you're going to be doing or inspiration for people. If you're open to answering questions that people may have, we love to have you at the open house at the end of September as well.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, and so for this next section, I'm really excited about this, and we also are going to be looking for people's feedback on this at the end with a feedback form that I'll also send out over email. But for people who are interested in just chatting a little bit more with other folks from around the state and some of our leadership team members and other active members from working groups, we're going to be jumping in to these small group breakouts momentarily. But just to kind of set the stage, because you can really talk about anything in these small groups. If you've got more questions, you just want to share your highlights, your challenges, that's fine. But I also wanted to kind of set the stage for how to get started coming out of this open house. This is kind of a common question I always get after running our new member info sessions, or we hear from people once they've become inspired and gotten all this great information is, okay, what do I do now? That was a lot of information. Do I just go to the website and find the stickers? There's a lot of different steps that you could take to get started. And it really does depend on where you're at right now. So I think the best universal tip that I have is to remember that collaboration is key. And the more people you can recruit and loop in to your farm to school activities and efforts, the more effective and efficient you will also become. And this was very apparent from all of the examples that our panelists provided. There wasn't one of them who didn't mention working in coordination with another stakeholder within their community. And so I want everybody just to think for a minute about who in your own community, whether that's your school or your neighborhood or your larger community, however you define your community, who do you know that's already engaged in or passionate about farm to school? And hopefully everybody can think of at least one other person. You're not alone. Maybe you're already working in partnership with a set of people. So that's really great. My first tip would be go back to those folks, share what you've learned here in this open house, invite them to come participate in these types of activities, and then also just start brainstorming and discussing what you can do together. But then the next step also is to think about who else should be involved. So obviously it's great to get the people, the sort of low hanging fruit and get those folks involved, pun intended. There's so many great puns working in this food systems world. But it's also important to get those high hanging fruits, maybe the people who are not necessarily as easy to access, but do have decision-making power. Or maybe they're not as easy to access because, they're really busy. So I think of like principals at a school, even sometimes farmers and producers who you might know, but they're really busy people, just like I'm sure everybody on this call is also really busy people. So the important thing to do is just think about that holistic approach we referenced in the very beginning of thinking about how we can get kids experiencing fresh food and learning about agriculture and trying fresh food in the cafeteria, the classroom, and community. And who are all the various players and people involved in those spaces? and go chat with them and talk to them. And I often hear from people after they go out and share what they're thinking about with people. They find that a lot of people are actually excited about and passionate about the concept of farm to school. They just need to be invited to come be a part of that brainstorming and the planning, and they'll help you open a lot of doors and maybe have even their own ideas themselves too. So I hope that's a helpful little exercise to take with you coming out of this open house. And if there's time and people are interested and want to share a little bit about your own community, people you have involved or you want to get involved, or even asking questions about how to approach some of those people, feel free to do that in some of the small groups as well. And the last thing I'll mention before we do go into small groups for about 15-ish minutes before coming back to the big group to wrap up is these groups are run by volunteers, so people who are active members with the PFSN. They're definitely not experts on everything farm to school, although many of them are extremely knowledgeable. I'll even pick on a little bit or compliment Tamara and Jasmine, who recently were wondering if they were even qualified to be able to facilitate a group. And both of them have already offered awesome resources and answered questions in this large group. So I can guarantee you that everybody's going to be able to learn from each other as we jump into these small groups. But thank you so much again for being here. We would love to hear your feedback. I'm also going to drop this link to our feedback survey in the chat right now, and we'll send it out in an email. So for those who are watching this webinar or open house over the recording, please also feel free to take the feedback survey, even if you weren't able to participate live action. We'd still love to hear what you thought about the content. And yeah, we're just really excited. We've done some sort of open houses like this in the past, the Farm to School Network, but this is the first one we've done in a little while, and we're hoping to, like I mentioned earlier, continue doing them once a quarter. So the next one again will be about Farm to School Month in October. It'll be right as October is around the corner, like the end of the month in September. So we're hoping that folks can spend the next couple months taking some time to plan out your activities for Farm to School Month, whatever that might look like, and then come and share those at the open house and also get some feedback or, you know, final tips and reminders that can help you run some really great programs. But with that, we're wrapping up this official open house. You're free to leave. We do have a couple more minutes that I can stay on until 3 o'clock if anybody does have any other lingering questions, and also open the room for anyone who wants to share anything. But thank you again so much to everybody who helped put on the open house and also for everybody who showed up. We look forward to being in connection with you in the future too. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So take the survey, feel free to pop off. And if anyone's got questions, I'm here to hopefully help you.
Sam, if I could ask a question.
Yes, Mar.
I just asked it in our small group breakout and we weren't sure, but so I work for under the SNAP-Ed umbrella, and all of the things that you probably know, all of the things we have to hand out have to be SNAP-Ed approved. Are all of the resources available under the Harvest of the Month program SNAP-Ed approved?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to punt that to my friend Audrey.
Cool.
So the things on the Pennsylvania Harvest of the Month website were not specifically SNAP-Ed approved.
Okay.
Sam, I'm going to punt this one back to you. So the Food Trust has developed educator resources, which Sam referred to. And my understanding was that they were modeled after a SNAP-Ed approved resource from another state and were sort of thereby considered SNAP-Ed approved. But you all at the Food Trust would have the more official answer on that.
Yes, that's correct, Audrey. Those activity guides that I profiled at the end of the presentation of the overview are SNAP-Ed approved because they were modeled after similar activity guides developed in California. So go to the website to check those ones out. And yeah, they kind of, like I mentioned, they're pretty good and comprehensive with a lot of different ideas. So yeah, that's a good starting point.
And Audrey, I'll just add, Mar had asked that question in our small group, and I was not really aware of the need for the materials to be SNAP-Ed approved, and a little embarrassing because SNAP-Ed is housed within our department here at Penn State. So I don't know what it would take, what it means to have material other than like the curriculum material SNAP-Ed approved, but it's something that we could certainly explore and look into.
That would be great, Elaine, if you could at least find out what that would mean.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How, and if you, when you do find out what that means, can you reach out to us or?
Sure.
Yeah, we can circle back. We'll be sure. It's a great question because there's a bunch of different people on this call right now who are working with agencies that are doing SNAP-Ed programming, and there's so much good alignment. So yeah, I think that's a very concrete action item for Audrey, Elaine, and myself to take back and try to figure out how do we sort of streamline that and give some guidance to SNAP-Ed providers in particular. So thank you all for raising that. It's awesome. All right, so we are
Yes,
at the top of the, oh, sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay, we are at the top of the hour, and so we're gonna have to wrap up this open house. I'm sure we could stay for like another half hour with people sharing things and asking great questions, but we will have more opportunities. Thank you again so much for your participation. And again, if there were any questions that were dropped in the chat that didn't get answered, I'll be spending over the course of the next few days, some time going through those. So I'll work to answer them, and always feel free to reach out to me directly if you still have a lingering question. And we hope to see many of you in our upcoming working groups or the next open house. So thank you so much. We'll be in touch.